Okay, hello everybody. We're going just to get started. It's like 1 minute after 4. So I'm going to put my presentation on. I assume you can see that. And yeah. So good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. This week we are going to discuss the weird and the wonderful data trends and what that means for events. As probably some of you know, we are Tag Digital. We are event PPC specialists, which basically means we are using paid media channels like Google, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Microsoft Ads to increase event attendees, exhibitor leads, and help you make more successful events. So before we start, a few housekeeping tips. Please mute your mic if it's not already muted. You can do that easily by scrolling down the screen and click on the mic icon, or use Command plus D if you're on Mac, or Control plus D if you're on a Windows device. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat box at the right-hand side. This webinar also is being recorded. So before we start the agenda for today, I will start first. I have prepared a short presentation of how search trends change over the last 2 months, how user behavior changed, and last but not least, what that means for event industry, with some tips and insights we can share with you from what we've seen across ads accounts we are managing. I call this the good, the bad, and the weird. After that, we have a special guest speaker today. This is Enya, who is our agency development manager at Google. She's going to run through understanding what matters to consumers. Finally, we are going to present a few new exciting tools from Google. As well, we have some time for a question and answer. So let's get started. First, a few words about me. So I'm Alex. I'm the head of the PPC in Tag Digital. I have over 10 years experience in digital marketing, working both in advertising and publishing space. Also, I'm a tech geek, as well as cycling enthusiast, playing in a rock and roll band from over 20 years. And last but not least, I'm also a failed astronaut, unfortunately. So let's get started in digital marketing now. So for the purpose of this presentation, we use different data sources, including Google Trends, WordStream report data, ads account we are managing, and some third-party data like NASA, World Economic Forum, etc. You can check the source at the bottom of the left corner of each slide. So a quick overview. The coronavirus pandemic has had an unprecedented impact of all aspects of our life, affecting the way we work, how we interact socially, and of course, how and what we are searching on Google. Even the phrase unprecedented times appears in more than 170 million web results at the moment. On the graph, you can see how coronavirus-related searches outperform everything we used to search in our pre-COVID life, like Google, Facebook, video game, and even porn. The good news is that since the end of April, we can see some pickup of the most common searches like Google, video gaming. So life is finding its own way to go back to like kind of new normal. As coronavirus dominated the searches on Google, we tried to figure out the new trends in Google searches related to COVID-19. So apart from the news around COVID-19, we can see a peak in all symptoms-related searches like fever, sore throat, shortness of breath, and loss of smell. On the right-hand side, you can see the US trending questions related to coronavirus from the past few days. And this is completely fresh data because I checked this morning. So US trending questions at the moment are: is headache a coronavirus symptom? Is it safe to fly during coronavirus, etc., etc.? So you can see them all at the slide deck. So as user behavior completely changed due to lockdown, we can see some common searches we used to do in pre-COVID-19 era just dropped down since March 2020. Searches like cinema times, pubs near me, city breaks, gyms near me, and nail salon decreased significantly. A few more examples, like a music festival, flights, package holidays, conventions, and wedding insurance dropped down by more than 800% in US since March. Looking at the UK data, we can see travel insurance, holiday insurance, and Ticketmaster's drop with more than 90%. As user behavior change, and we see some common searches decreases, we can see an increase of some not some common searches like flower, home workout, baking recipes, yoga online, board games. These searches increased significantly in the last month. A few more examples from the UK trends, like a local farm delivery increase with 900%, baking recipes increased by 2,500%, ranging equipment went up with more than 3,600%. Searches like makeup tutorial and hair tutorial tend to improve their appearance, as all are up by more than 500% in US. So we can clearly see there's a shift in user behavior, and that's all for good. So this next slide is interesting for me. It's very exciting as well. So here is the good news. The images here show the average concentration of atmospheric nitrogen dioxide as measured by NASA over satellite. The first image shows the average concentration in March 2015-2019, while the second image shows the average concentration measured in March of this year in a few regions of the US. Nitrogen dioxide basically is showing how user behavior change or how user activities change. So because that shows the use of burning fossil fuel, transportation, and electricity generation. NASA satellite data shows that 30% drop of air pollution over Northeast US as well. The data from the UK looks similar. We can see a sharp drop in air pollution since the lockdown was announced on 23rd of March compared to the same period last year, halving at some of the most polluted cities, including readings from London, Glasgow, Bristol, and Oxford. So in general, that's an amazing news. And as the picture is worth 1,000 words, you can see pictures from the World Economic Forum showing a visible difference in air pollution in India. The second picture is from a local website showing here local Glasgow website showing how nature is coming back. So you can see a deer at the Buchanan station in the city center of Glasgow. Here are some more trends related to the change in our behavior. As we are all locked in our homes, we still need some goods. So there's a boom of ordering online related searches. As you can see on the graph, this is from Google Ads. Online ordering searches increased roughly 4 times in the UK in April and May this year compared with 2019. We can clearly see spikes in search volume for ordering food online, ordering online at Tesco, order online, Asda, etc. So you can see as some businesses struggling during coronavirus pandemic, some other flourished. Alongside the change of the user behavior, some weird and strange searches appear at the same time, and this, I'll say, probably is the favorite part of this presentation, at least favorite part for me. So the first thing, bored. So people start searching for bored, thinking that they will find the answer in Google. How to cut your own hair. Obviously, as hairdresser is not working at the moment, we are trying to find our own solution for that problem. Toilet paper online also entered the Hall of Fame in early March. So you've probably seen a lot of this in the news, as well as in empty shelves in the shops. But while someone's searching for buying toilet paper online, some other just wondering, why buying toilet paper online? Obviously, some consumers are more curious than the others. Another good and weird example from the UK. So, as initiative of showing appreciation to NHS, each Thursday at 7 p.m., people across UK showing out their gardens, windows, etc., and they start clapping with hands. But here comes like the awkward British question of how long do you clap for NHS? And you can clearly see that there's a spike of that searches on every single Thursday. And finally, from this section, I'll say this is my personal finding. what's happened with the searches for t-shirt and jeans pre and post-COVID outbreak. So you can see that the trend was steady till March, as a trend, and then jeans just went down. So why? What's the reason? And probably the next slide will give you an answer, or one of the answer. So this is the ABC News reporter that seems to have forgotten something slightly more important while broadcasting from home. And that's just the weird part of the searches that we're seeing at the moment. So here we have a few slides which are more related to what's happening in the PPC ecosystem. So this is data for WordStream, covering the general changes in paid advertising. So the good things first, Google search ads CTR have increased by 15%. Basically, that means that the users clicked more on ads, which basically leads to higher quality score, which leads to lower CPC. As you can see from this is a second trend as well. Google search CPC decreased by 12%. So this means that advertising paying less compared with the pre-COVID CPC, which basically is the dream of every single advertiser or digital marketer. As user behavior change, users are not searching less, they are just searching differently and searching for different products or services, which leads to the next trend, which saying consumer searches and preferences are shifting, not ending. This means that there's a tons of new opportunities. Finally, as behavior change, there's increase in traffic in Google Display Network. So there's more than 13% uplift in GDN and YouTube ads with 21%, as users are more likely to spend more time browsing websites and YouTubes compared with pre-COVID period. Of course, there's some bad news as well. Firstly, Google search ads clicks have decreased by 5% since beginning of March. So again, this is based on changed user behavior as people search slightly shifts in different direction, as well as new users are spending more time on social network, news website, and YouTube. This leads to the second one, which is Google search ads conversion rate dropped down by 16% on average. This means that users clicked on ad but converted 16% less compared with the previous period. Finally, US store visits conversions fallen with 90% since February. So this is applicable only to the businesses with physical stores, and basically this metric connects the ad impression and ad click to at user level with actual someone visiting your store. But what are the trends specifically for event industry? That's like a more important for all of us. So searches for exhibitions, trade shows, and conferences decreased significantly since coronavirus outbreak. So you can see that on the graph. At the same time, searches around virtual events and video conferences increased in March as the industry is trying to find a new way to work and to do events in a slightly different way. So if we compare virtual events with the live events, you can see a shift in that search volume of these two topics, with decrease of live events and increase in virtual events. Similar trends we can see by comparing webinars and seminars. Now users are most interested in webinars compared to seminars. Also, at staying at home, people are more interested in learning new skills, which leads to boom of webinars and virtual trainings. I have a few more data here. So this one is comparing the search volume of a well-known trade show happening in the end of May each year in the US. So I compared search volume for brand terms only in March 2019 and March 2020. As you can see, we have 1,900 average monthly searches in March 2019 compared with 2,400 monthly searches in March 2020. Just a bit more context of this one. So this event was postponed early March, but you can see the search volume is still there, and it's even higher compared with previous year. So there is a clear user intent and clear user indication. And what you're going to do with this basically very, very bottom of the funnel, high quality traffic is completely up to you. There's a few options, but the obvious one is try to capitalize on that traffic. and not lose it. If you think from the flip side of the coin, if you don't use that traffic, if you don't run your campaigns, it's more likely that your competitor will take this advantage. And some other thing you probably need to consider if you still want to run your campaigns, it's just to be very careful with the message of that. So you don't need to do like a rule of thumb. You don't need to apply any sales techniques at the moment, and try to be more useful and helpful for your audience. Here we have some data which is basically from the ads accounts we are managing. So as a user behavior change over the night, there was less interest in live events initially, as user consumed more news, watched videos, etc., which led to lower CTR on events-related ads. As you can see, average CTR or click-through rate drops by 32%, as a lot of advertisers initially post all ongoing campaigns trying to figure out what they're going to do next, cancel the event, postpone, change it to hybrid or virtual. Conversion rate really dropped drastically, down by 69%, based on the fact that advertisers post most of their ads on an ongoing campaign. That makes ad auctions less crowded, which led to the lower average cost per click. So average CPC decreased by 9%. Here I have some other stats. So this basically compared the click and conversion data pre and post COVID-19. So we can see a slight shift of day of the week performance. As a standard, click-through weekdays are higher compared with the weekends, as well as from conversion point of view. But now we can see a higher number of clicks and conversion in a weekend, which is something new for a B2B advertiser. It is probably caused by working from home and blurred lines of the working week. And here, another interesting data. So looking at device data, we can see increase in desktop traffic by 10% and decrease in mobile traffic with around 5%. But looking at conversion data, we can surprisingly see decrease in conversions of desktop devices and increase in mobile conversions. Finally, this is like one interesting, I know the graph probably is not the best in the world, but what we're trying to do, this is the data from account comparing cost and conversion data from this year when the event pivoted to virtual, compared with the same date range from 2019 when the event was a live event. So as you can see, we are getting great results in terms of conversion. So events registration are up with 627%, CPA is down with 89%. At the same time, conversion rate dropped by 2.4%, but this is mainly based on the fact that now we're using more top of the funnel activities as Google display ads, YouTube ads, and all of that combined with more sophisticated like tools we're getting for Google, like smart bidding techniques. This leads to better results. Also, the other thing is that geo-targeting is not an issue. It's not issue, probably is not the right word, but yeah, it's not a case anymore, because you can attend virtually from every single location, and this creates a great new opportunities for the brands, which leads to my last slide, which say it's a quote from Albert Einstein saying, "In the middle of difficulties lies opportunities." And before I pass over to Enya, a bit of reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat box on the right-hand side. So now I'm going to escape here and stop presenting. So Enya.
Perfect. Thank you, Alex. I'm going to attempt to present here. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. So, hi everyone. My name is Aina, and I'm an agency development manager at Google. I'm actually based in Dublin. I've had the pleasure of working with Tag Digital for almost a year and a half now, and I'm really, really delighted to be here. I wanted to focus on the consumer today. So the topic of my section is called Understanding What Matters to Consumers. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, consumer needs are changing really more rapidly than ever before. And the trends that we're seeing in some ways could be compared to the likes of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So initially in the outbreak of COVID, we would have seen a move towards the essential needs, and they were being searched online. So things like grocery deliveries or medication, that they were all being searched. As the pandemic progressed, we saw more of a movement towards the likes of personal care, oral care, and those kind of things. And then now we're at a stage where we're seeing search behavior change again, where people are comfortable enough that they're in lockdown. In some cases, in some countries, they're moving out of lockdown, and we're actually seeing more of search behavior around the nice to have. So the likes of the sunscreen or the parasols or children's toys and things like that. So it's really been so interesting to watch how behavior has been changing throughout the whole roller coaster that's been this pandemic. So when we think about, I suppose, understanding what matters to consumers, I always turn to search trends, which give us really good insights into, firstly, what people actually know. And people are turning to the internet to answer all of their questions. They're seeking really, really timely and accurate information from trusted sources. And I think that's one of the reasons why national news publications are also seeing a rise in readership. In this example that you can see on screen, I wanted to take some insights from the UK market. And so using Google Trends again, I wanted to look at what people actually know and what information are they looking for. And in the UK, what we see is as of the 12th of April and all the way up to the 5th of May, there's been a real increase in interest around search queries like, when can I see my family again? We're also seeing that political announcements and media publications are having a huge impact on search behaviour. Taking the UK again, on the 10th of May, an announcement was made by Boris Johnson, and part of it related to real estate agencies and the likelihood of them opening up. Immediately looking at the trends, we were able to see that there was a massive increase in the UK around house price queries, and we saw a similar occurrence in Germany. So as more restrictions ease off, more people, we believe, will turn to Google for information. Search trends are also giving us really interesting insights into how people are making a living currently. And when it comes to Google, work, money, and accommodation, and all of the big financial decisions are really top of mind for everyone. So again, I wanted to look to my friend Google Trends to see what's happening in South Africa. And I suppose what people are looking for in South Africa, and where we saw the most interest, was in the query around unemployment insurance fund. Similarly, again, looking at the UK, when it comes to how to make a living, people were worried about when they should return to work. So back to work became a rising interest term in the last couple of weeks, as people were unsure of when they should be returning to the office or their business. Now more than ever, search trends are also giving us insights into how people are feeling. And since the outbreak of COVID, search trends are showing really changing attitudes about ourselves, each other, and the wider world. So I think it's fair to say that consumers are really turning to online communities to stay connected, to continue to prioritize their overall health and well-being while being at home. Looking at Google Trends again, we saw interesting insights in the Spanish market, where there was a peak in interest, again looking at the period of the 12th of April to the 6th of May, at the end of April roughly, around queries for virtual gyms. At the same time, people in the UK were particularly interested in virtual escape rooms, and interestingly, people in Poland have been searching for body mass index information. Search trends can also let us know what people are doing with their time across all different verticals like leisure, travel, retail, media, or entertainment. In this example, I pulled on the Turkish market, and I saw that again since the 12th of April, there's been a steady increase in interest in queries around coffee machines. So it's just been on the rise and peaked in the beginning of May. People in Finland around the same time were showing massive interest in queries around swimming pools. And interestingly, people in Italy have been searching near me, the query, due to obviously the strict restrictions that are in place there. What's really interesting about queries relating to near me is that we would have been seeing a slow decrease in near me queries over the past couple of years globally, and that was mostly down to the fact that our search algorithms were getting more and more advanced. We're able to show the right and most relevant information, and consumers began to realize that they no longer really needed to search for near me anymore, that the information that would be present to them on Google search would be most likely nearest to them. So I think the gravity of the restrictions that were put in place in Italy meant that people were especially concerned with understanding how near a business or a service was to them, and if it sat within the radius of kilometre restrictions. Finally, when we look to understand what matters to consumers, we're analysing trends to see how people are learning. And the outbreak of COVID has led to a rise in interest in both informal and formal education for both children and adults. And really, YouTube is the place that consumers are turning to. So regardless of skill level, consumers around the world are turning to YouTube to learn their own way. As watch time for language lectures and guitar tutorials, interestingly, have increased. Again, I turned to Google Trends to look at what was happening around YouTube searches in the French market. And interestingly, the term classe virtuelle, which I presume means virtual class in English, has been on the rise and steadily increasing ever since the 12th of May. Around the same time, outside of YouTube, going back to our friend Google search, people in Nigeria have been particularly interested in queries around learning apps. So I think it's fair to say that all around the world, people are looking to upskill. I think looking at YouTube again, and on that note around informal and formal language or learning in general, we have seen a huge increase in watch time on YouTube. In fact, a 500% increase in watch time year on year when it comes to lectures on spoken languages. So spoken languages is obviously a term that's just coming up and is really, really important on YouTube. And again, I think it highlights that increasingly YouTube is a place that people are turning to upskill in various different ways. To go into YouTube in a bit more detail, as a product and as a platform, it is really having its time in the sun. Turning to the UK market as an example, we have some really interesting and fresh stats that are looking at the past 28 days in terms of viewership and watch time. And so in the UK, again, what we've seen is year on year, there's actually been a 27% increase in watch time on YouTube. And even more interestingly, I think a 31% increase in people streaming YouTube from their mobile devices to their TVs. Staying with the topic of YouTube and potentially more relevant to the industry that you all work in, which is the events industry, it's definitely becoming a platform that people are turning to for virtual event streaming as well. So interestingly, YouTube launched its first virtual fashion show this year, which had a viewership of 285K of people. So for the first time, models were basically trying on different clothes and modeling them in the comforts of their own homes. People also turned to YouTube to watch Andrea Bocelli's Milan concert live stream to the actual tune of 39 million views, which is just phenomenal. So I think it's fair to say that YouTube is increasingly becoming a platform that people turn to watch events and shows. At Google, I suppose we have access to a lot of data points. So when I thought about what information would really be the most useful to marketers in the event industry, I immediately turned to the top terms report. So we would have access to what top queries people are searching for globally, and the trends that were particularly, and equally the trends that were particularly interesting for UK and US event verticals. So I honed in year on year on what were the main changes, looking at top terms for the UK and US. And so I suppose the top and the number one trend for me looking at the UK was, and this is based on the last 2 weeks worth of data, has been a move from really brand-led queries to more generic queries when it comes to the event vertical. So this time last year, where people would have been searching things like Chelsea Flower Show and other big events, in fact, this time they're looking for quite generic terms like summit, expo, exhibition, in fact. The UK has also seen a rise in virtual exhibitions, and online exhibitions is very much touching on what Alex already explained. And the interesting thing is that they just didn't feature this time last year when I looked at top terms for 2019. In the US, we're seeing a really similar trend for generic terms, but still see actually a strong presence of branded terms. So I suppose it's fair to say there's less change year on year in the US. Potentially, I suppose the way different states are opening up at different times, this means people who are searching for specific events might be more likely to type in the branded term than a more generic term, because they're looking to make sure that an event is going on, depending on how lockdown is being eased. Virtual events in the US also feature heavily in the top terms report, and interestingly, an increase in searches for on demand. I think what's really interesting about that is that this year, where it didn't feature last year, people are expecting not only the likes of the virtual exhibitions and the online exhibitions or the virtual shows or events, they're also looking for them to be on demand. So they're hoping that they don't have to sit and watch it at the time when it's taking place, but that they can watch it later on in the comfort of their own home at whatever time they want to. Lastly, I suppose I wanted to be as helpful as possible, and I always love to include a list of top resources for marketers like yourselves. So these are my top 5 Google resources for marketers. I start with the most popular, which is our Think with Google website. So this contains blogs and videos and really, really interesting articles made by our people who are really, really in the weeds of the different verticals that they work in. And a lot of it right now is around how to deal with pandemics. And it's really tailored to different markets and also different verticals. So I know recently on Think with Google, they did a really good breakdown of virtual streaming or live streaming events, which I definitely recommend looking at. So as I said, I rely heavily on Google Trends, and it's an extremely useful tool. In Google Trends, you can see trending queries for different countries. And we recently actually introduced a section for COVID trends where you can see rising queries related to COVID, which I think is really useful. Interestingly, the top one in the UK today was who is Gemma Collins in isolation with, so I'm not sure what to take from that. You have access also to similar insights on YouTube Trends, where you can see trending videos and rising queries across all of the different categories. My 4th is Google Alerts. Google Alerts is just a really, really useful tool. So it allows you to set up curated alerts for the topic or competitor of your choice that come into your inbox automatically, weekly or daily. So if you're particularly interested in publications around a particular competitor, you can basically set up an alert to make sure you get that information or you get those publications as soon as they're released and they come into your inbox. Finally, an important one is Google Ads OptiScore. So this is an account optimization score that's visible as a percentage at the top of your Google Ads account. It takes into account how well budget is being used, what keywords are missing, and a host of other things. Most importantly, it shows a list of account recommendations. So this tool uses the basics of machine learning to take insights in real time from what's happening in every single auction, and it tailors optimization recommendations using that machine learning to your account. So in a period of uncertainty like now, it's a really crucial metric for advertisers to be keeping an eye on. And that is everything from myself. I'm going to hand it back to Alex.
Thanks, Anya. That was really useful and great. So I have a few more tools I want to share with you. Just a second. Okay. So I assume you can see my screen now, right? So this next one is just announced by Google probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's called Raising Retail Categories. I know it's not probably so much related to event industry, but you can see really good trends that probably you can use somehow. So this is a brand new interactive tool you can use to understand fast rising retail categories in Google search. You can choose a location, check specific category, and the queries associated with them. So the data is updated daily and reflects changes in search interest. At the moment, the tools covers only data from US, UK, and Australia, but I believe they will expand that soon. The next one is probably, I have two more tools. They're more related of how you can grow internationally. As we said, now it's really good time, especially if you're doing virtual events, to think about how much, like, how you can expand your audience apart from your standard geolocation. So the first one is called Market Finder. So the Market Finder recommends the best market for your business and gives you all the insights you need to research your next global market. Once you decide your next market, in this example, you see Germany and Japan, we select somehow, and you can use Google tools, guides, and resources to plan the next steps in the journey of your global market. So we can help you navigate areas like localization, international payments, and logistic if we need that at all. The next one is Google Market Explorer. So this tool is really great. So this tool gives you a detailed data and guidelines on selected international market you want to enter by providing insights about demand, trends, competition, and the audience. So we at Tag Digital have an access of this exclusive tool based on the fact that we are one of the 20 select agencies here in the UK taking part in a Google International Growth Program. So this tool is not public, but if you have any inquiries about how you can grow international, feel free to contact us. And finally, a few key takeaways from tomorrow or from today's webinar. So the first thing, pivot to virtual or hybrid event, because as you can see, there's a demand on that and you probably need to use it. Keep your brand search CPC still low. We touch upon this one about how you can use it and what you may say. Find your audiences across YouTube, display, and social. So at the moment, we see a really great results by using display network and YouTube. Use smart bidding to cope better with the changing behavior. So basically, if we, as you see, there's a lot of new searches coming up, and if we're trying to set manually the right bid for every single auction, that's not possible. I think there's like a more than 20% completely new searches every day on Google. So the best way to cope with that different demand or like a completely new searches is to use machine learning, which means smart bidding. Next one is answer your users' needs in your ads. So we touch upon this one as well. So yeah, try to be helpful as much as possible. Don't try to sell now. And yeah, get ready for a higher competition and higher CPC in Q4 when everything's probably go back to normal and probably when there will be a lot of live events as well. And also finally, yeah, probably it's time to think more internationally because that's a great opportunities at the moment. And basically that's all from us. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can contact me at alex@tagdigital.co.uk, or you can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And now it's time for questions. Yeah. Do we have any questions? Let me see. Um, so the first one, from Ashley, do you think the data shows people have evolved and adapted to change, or will revert back to what they were doing? Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So people are very adaptive in general. That's why probably we are at the top of the like a speech kind of thing. So I think I don't know what's the answer, but I assume that after this one there will be change in user behavior. I believe for good. So it really depends of how long we're staying in that state. So if we stay in for let's say 3 or 6 months, there definitely will be no turning back points for some topics. But if we stay, for example, just 1 month or two, yeah, we're already 2 months. So probably it would be easier to go back to like normal, whatever it was. So I hope that answered that question. Yeah.
I can add something to that as well. That when it comes to the consumer, I'm thinking in particular around retail verticals. I think that the consumer has changed fundamentally in light of COVID. We're probably going to see older age demographics using the likes of online purchases much more. And once they have gotten into that habit, I think it will be more likely that they would continue. So whatever discoveries consumers have had and that have been most, I suppose, seamless and most useful, I think they'll continue to do even in a post-COVID world.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Yeah, another question. Do you think the virtual events and virtual and hybrid events will always be part of the fabric going forward? I think once the brands and advertising seeing good results from virtual event, there is no any logic to go back to what it was. I assume there'll be just more hybrid, because you see with an event industry, the real human interaction is very important to do a good business, but you can do like a relatively good business even without that. So probably there'll be again exhibitions like there was in the past, but there'll be additional digital kind of event going at the same time, and probably there'll be on-demand events, kind of event that's happened afterwards. So if you can go on that event but you're really interested, you can subscribe and then watch every single on that event later. So I assume, yeah, that will be apart from the future events anyway. So Johnny said, you mentioned CPC is going up later in this year. Can you explain why this would be? So yeah, this is a kind of assumption, but I think that now the ad auctions are really not so crowded. But when all the advertisers come back in, let's say, September, and there'll be like a tier of postponed event from the March and from the summer that's going to happen in the autumn. But there is also events happening in the autumn, and they're planned to be happened in autumn. So there's be a higher competition because there'll be more events trying to get the same audience at this time of the year. So that's why I'm assuming that there'll be like a higher competition, and higher competition from advertising point of view means higher CPC because there are just more players. Yeah. Anything else? Francesca Fraser, is there one sector industry that you think may be most expensive? I have no idea on that question. Anya, do you have any idea?
I mean, it's very, very hard to say because you're talking about a lot of moving parts about forecasting what kind of competitor landscape you're going to have at that time. I also think that different countries are going to come out of lockdown at different times, which will also influence how, I suppose, events and real face-to-face events are run. So I don't think we could fully answer what industry or what sector would be most expensive, but I think I think we'll probably see a return to pre-COVID, a pre-COVID situation.
Yeah, thanks for that. And as I can see, there is no more questions, so we are at the end of that. So thank you very much, everyone attending this webinar, and hope to see you soon. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.